What you're about to hear is one of the most unforgettable moments ever witnessed in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. A moment where justice was not written in books, but felt in the human heart. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where people file into court to pay small fines, explain parking mistakes, or plead for leniency. But that day, something different was waiting for Judge Caprio. Something that would remind him why compassion is the highest form of law. The courtroom was already busy when the bailiff called out, "Next case, Bufkin versus the City of Providence." Heads turned as an elderly man slowly rose from the back row. He leaned on a simple wooden cane, his steps deliberate but heavy, each one carrying decades of quiet struggle. Judge Caprio looked up from the bench. He'd seen thousands of defendants before, but something about this man caught his attention. Maybe it was the faint gleam of military pins on his jacket, or the way he carried himself with both pride and pain. "Good morning, sir," Judge Caprio greeted gently, his familiar warmth filling the room. The man nodded, his voice low but steady. "Morning, Your Honor. My name's William Bufkin." A hush fell over the courtroom. Even those waiting for their own cases leaned forward. There was something in the man's tone, an honesty that didn't need to prove itself. The clerk read out the charge. "Mr. Bufkin is here regarding multiple unpaid parking citations and a late fee accumulation, totaling $310. Judge Caprio sighed softly. Parking tickets were usually simple matters, but the man's expression told him this wasn't about the money. "Mr. Bufkin," he said kindly, "can you tell me what happened?" Bufkin cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor. The first ticket was from a few months ago, when I parked outside the VA hospital. I was inside for my appointment. It ran longer than I expected. By the time I got back, the meter was blinking red." The judge nodded, listening. "I paid what I could, sir," Bufkin continued, "but then another one came. And another. My old truck broke down, I had hospital bills, and, well, I guess I fell behind." He paused, glancing down at his hands, rough, trembling slightly. "I didn't mean to ignore them, Your Honor. I'm trying to take care of myself on my pension. Some days, it's medicine or the ticket. I chose the medicine." For a brief second, no one spoke. Even the court stenographer stopped typing. Judge Caprio leaned forward. He'd heard countless excuses in his career, but this wasn't one. This was a confession from a man who'd given too much already. "Mr. Bufkin," Caprio asked softly, "you said you were at the VA hospital. Are you a veteran?" "Yes, sir. United States Army. Vietnam, 68. The courtroom seemed to inhale as one. Judge Caprio's eyes softened. "That was a difficult year, a difficult place." Bufkin gave a small nod. "I was with the 1st Cavalry, sir. Lost a few good men over there. Guess I was lucky to make it back." He gave a faint, humble smile. "Didn't think I'd still be fighting battles at this age." A small ripple of emotion passed through the room. People who had come that morning just to pay fines now sat still, listening, as if they were witnessing something sacred. At that moment, a young city prosecutor named Collins stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "while we respect Mr. Bufkin's service, the law applies to everyone. These tickets have been outstanding for over a year." The tone was polite but firm, procedural, almost cold. Judge Caprio turned his gaze to him. "Mr. Collins," he said slowly, "do you know what day it is today?" Collins blinked. "Tuesday, Your Honor." Caprio nodded. "Yes. But did you know this week marks 57 years since the Tet Offensive? Many soldiers never came home from that. Mr. Bufkin did. And he's standing in front of us, still trying to do the right thing." The room fell silent again. Collins swallowed, lowering his eyes. Judge Caprio looked back at Bufkin. "Tell me something, Mr. Bufkin," he said gently. "How are you doing now? You still getting treatment at the VA?" Bufkin nodded. "Yes, sir. I go every few weeks. Got some trouble with my lungs and back. Agent Orange, they said. He hesitated, then added quietly, lost my wife 2 years ago. It's just me now. I keep busy volunteering, help other vets fill out their forms. Sometimes we have breakfast at the community hall. His eyes drifted upward for a moment, remembering. Most of them don't talk much about the past. But it's there, sir. It's always there. Judge Caprio took a slow breath. He looked at the man, not as a defendant, but as someone who had already paid a price far greater than any fine. Mr. Bufkin, he said softly, you came here today knowing you might have to pay this amount, correct? Yes, Your Honor, Bufkin replied. I figured it was time to face it. Didn't want to run from it. The judge smiled faintly. You didn't run from anything, Mr. Bufkin. Not then, and not now. He leaned back in his chair. Justice, Caprio said slowly, isn't about punishing people for being sick, or poor, or old. It's about understanding why something happened, and deciding what fairness truly means. Then he looked out over the courtroom. This man fought for his country. He's still fighting to breathe every day. And the only thing he's guilty of is caring more about staying alive than feeding a parking meter. A murmur of agreement rippled through the spectators, but Judge Caprio wasn't finished. He tapped his pen thoughtfully on the bench. Mr. Collins, he said, turning toward the young prosecutor, I want to ask you something. If your father or grandfather stood here, with the same story, the same sacrifices, what would you ask this court to do? The prosecutor hesitated. His jaw tightened, then softened. He took a breath. Your Honor. I'd ask for mercy. Caprio nodded. That's a good answer, Mr. Collins. Because mercy is the law's most powerful tool. He looked back at Bufkin. Mr. Bufkin, I'm not going to fine you today. Not 1 cent. In fact, this court will dismiss your case entirely. Gasps filled the room. Bufkin looked up, stunned. Your Honor. I don't know what to say. The judge smiled gently. Just say you'll keep coming to those veterans' breakfasts. And maybe tell them that justice is still alive in Providence. For a few seconds, the courtroom was completely silent. Then, slowly, people began to clap. It wasn't loud or theatrical, it was the quiet applause of gratitude, of understanding. Bufkin wiped his eyes with a trembling hand. Thank you, sir. God bless you. Judge Caprio stood up and stepped down from the bench, something he rarely did. He walked over to the veteran, extended his hand, and said softly, thank you for your service, and for reminding all of us what courage really looks like. Bufkin smiled, eyes glistening. No, sir. Thank you, for reminding me what justice still feels like. When the hearing ended, Bufkin sat outside on the courthouse steps for a long time. He didn't leave right away. He just watched the morning sun filter through the trees, warming his face. Inside, Judge Caprio returned to his chambers. But his mind stayed with that man, that quiet warrior who had carried so much. That night, Caprio would tell his wife, you know, sometimes we think we're teaching others about the law. But today, the law learned something from a soldier. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the Providence Municipal Court. It was written in careful, uneven handwriting. Dear Judge Caprio, I wanted to thank you again for what you did for me. But more than that, I wanted to tell you something. After that day, I started helping more vets at the center, those who can't read the fine print or understand their forms. I told them there are still good people in the world who care. I told them about you. Sincerely. William Bufkin. Judge Caprio folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer in his desk. He didn't reply, but every time he opened that drawer, he read it again. Months later, a local news reporter interviewed Judge Caprio for a feature called The Heart of Justice. When asked if any particular case stood out to him, Caprio smiled faintly. There was one, he said. A veteran who came in for a parking ticket. But he left reminding us what true honor looks like. The reporter asked, "Do you think your decision was legal, Judge?" "Technically, the fines were valid." Caprio chuckled softly. Justice isn't about being technical. It's about being human. The law gives us the tools to punish, but our conscience tells us when to forgive. Years passed, and that single case became a quiet legend among those who worked in Providence Municipal Court. They said that every time a veteran walked in after that day, Caprio would smile just a little wider. Every clerk, every bailiff, every visitor who had been there still remembered that morning, the old soldier, the trembling voice, and the judge who chose compassion over protocol. Bufkin never appeared in court again. But on Veterans Day the following year, a folded flag was sent to the courthouse with a note. "In memory of those who stood before you, and those who stood beside you. Thank you for giving justice a human heart." Judge Caprio placed it in his office window, where the morning light would shine through it every day. The story of Bufkin versus Collins was never about a parking ticket. It was about the invisible battles that people fight long after the wars are over. It was about the power of one judge's heart to remind the world that kindness is not weakness, it's strength refined by wisdom. And though the official record may call it a dismissed case, everyone who witnessed that day knew better. That courtroom became a place of healing, for one man, and for everyone who saw justice take the form of mercy. Because sometimes, the greatest verdict a judge can deliver is simply to say, "You've done enough. Go in peace."